Welcome to Oz and Elsewhere. My name is Rebecca, and this is my new Booktube channel. So, like any other Booktube newbie, I thought I'd start with the Booktube newbie tag. It seems like the thing to do, and it's a nice way for me to kind of articulate for myself and for anybody who might ever watch this what my goal is with starting this channel. So I found this tag online. It's been around since like 2014 because I remember watching this stuff in high school, and it's pretty cool to actually do something. So here goes. First question is, why did you start this channel? I mean, I think at the foundation of it is all of us have the same answer to this question. It's we want to talk about books, and we don't have enough people in our life to fill that void. And it's kind of the same for me. Also, I moved to a new city or actually a whole new country about a year ago, and I've heard that there is a good literary scene here, but I haven't quite been able to be a part of it yet. I haven't quite figured out, where everything is. I haven't gotten my stuff together enough to even get a library card. So this is my way of kind of being part of the literary community, no matter where I live. And also, unlike a lot of members of Booktube, I never studied literature. I studied political science in college, even though I wanted to study English because I thought poli-sci would be more practical, and then I never got a job in my field anyway, so talk about a missed opportunity. So I kind of wanted to start this channel so I'd have a place to work through literary analysis in a way that I maybe didn't in college, and kind of trying to flex those muscles. So the second question is, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? I mean, I don't know how fun I am. I'll try. I'm hoping to bring a bit more of an international perspective to Booktube because even though, as you can probably tell from my accent, I was born in the United States, I was raised in the United States. My parents aren't from the United States, they're from Croatia, and I actually moved to Croatia a few years ago and then moved again, and now I live in Serbia for personal reasons. So I'm hoping to kind of bring a different perspective to Booktube and feature a lot of Balkan literature, including some of my favorite books that maybe haven't been translated yet. And I'm hoping that this way I'll also be able to challenge myself to read more in Croatian and Serbian. I'll tell you what I won't bring to Booktube, and that's a lot of the kind of consumerism that I think made me stop watching Booktube for a while before I eventually found different creators. By virtue of where I live, I'm not going to be doing fairy loot unboxings. I'm not going to be doing massive hauls. The city I live in doesn't have that many independent bookstores. Most of these kind of trendy book sites don't ship to Serbia, and I probably wouldn't be spending a lot of money on them anyway because even though I make good money by Serbian standards, it's still by Serbian standards. So I'm hoping that with my channel I'll kind of challenge this consumerism that's a bit prevalent in certain parts of Booktube, and hopefully remind people that people outside of the United States exist. The third question is, what are you most excited for about this new channel? I guess I'm just excited for the potential to blab and nobody tell me to shut up, except for in the comments, although I hope you won't do that. I'm excited to kind of challenge myself to make reading a more regular practice because I noticed like I think a lot of people, I was a big reader as a kid, and then now I let myself get distracted by other stuff. But now if I have it in my mind, okay, I have to make 2 videos a month or however the schedule I decide on, I can't, spend my entire time before bed playing on my phone instead of reading. And I'm also hoping that this will challenge me to engage a bit deeper with my reading and with my creative practice, to think more about what I'm reading and to develop my opinions on literature and be forced to kind of defend them in the public sphere. So yeah, this is why I said I'm not sure if I'll bring any fun stuff to YouTube. It's more of a nerdy kind of vibe around here, including about stuff that I don't want to be nerdy about. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to mention. I'm really hoping to kind of bring a more analytical lens, but in a fun way, to genres that maybe don't get the serious treatment. One series I'm planning is on, in-depth analyses of children's books that I read or that were popular kind of for our generation, because I think that's really important literature and very formative literature, but maybe doesn't get the same serious treatment it deserves. Why do you love reading? That's the next question. I guess that's also another question where I don't know if I'm going to be very different from most of BookTube. I just like disappearing in new worlds. That was my motivation a lot when I was younger, because I read mostly fantasy, but one thing I'm rediscovering about reading now as my tastes change is my favorite thing about reading is finding out that someone put on the page an experience that I thought was uniquely mine and that had only ever happened to me, and that kind of rush in your belly where you realize, oh no, this is something other people experience, and maybe I just haven't thought of it that way. I think whether you're using it to escape or whether you're using it to discover new things about yourself, reading has the potential to just teach you so much and make you think a different way. My least favorite English teacher in high school once said that if you read a book and you finish it thinking completely the same way that you did before, it wasn't a good book, which I think we don't have to apply that to every single standard. Like sometimes I just want to read and for enjoyment, I don't want to, have my life upturned. But I've been applying that lens more and more as well. I've been finding that resonating with me more and more with the reading choices that I've been making recently. So what book or series got you into reading? This is really embarrassing, but Geronimo Stilton. Everyone's saying, Martin Amis or really highbrow stuff. I've been an avid reader since I was a kid, so it wasn't Jane Austen, it was Geronimo Stilton. I don't know if anyone else knew this, but I didn't know Geronimo Stilton wasn't American. I think that's really interesting. I might do a video about this at one point. It's one of the few really popular children's series that made the crossover from another language into English rather than the other way around. Because Geronimo Stilton, it's this Italian series about anthropomorphized mice, and the main character, Geronimo Stilton, is this super cowardly newspaper editor in New Mouse City, or New Rat City, I can't remember. I am not a true fan, apparently, who winds up going on all these adventures even though he really just wants to sit at home. And when I was a kid, I just thought they were super funny and super engaging, and I just read them all the time, and then I think that's what got me into the taste for fantasy and adventure that formed the bulk of my reading when I was younger and got me into the habit of reading. So yeah, if we're going to talk about books that made me think more seriously about reading, or maybe you want to study literature, I guess there are those, but the book that got me into reading, period, Geronimo Stilton. The sixth question is, what questions would you ask your favorite booktuber? I don't really have questions because most booktubers these days do AMAs or Instagram stickers, so I could just ask them. I guess, I don't know, if I was in a room with Savage Reads or one of my other favorite creators, I'd just ask them, how they made that transition from casual reader to booktuber, and how they deal with potential burnout, or whether they kind of regret turning their hobby into something a bit more structured, or what their benefits are from that. Because I'm trying to be a bit cautious with this new adventure. The seventh question is, what challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? I kind of touched on this, but definitely staying consistent and not going to burnout. It's a little bit silly to think about burnout as I'm recording my very first booktube video ever, but I know myself, and I know I tend to kind of throw myself into hobbies and then burn out really fast and then abandon them, and I don't want to do it with this, especially if I put in the effort and people actually start watching these, which kind of shock horror. I don't know why you would do that. So I'm sticking to a kind of slower but more consistent pace for now. And I'm also a bit worried about formalizing my hobbies. You say don't monetize your passions. Obviously, this isn't monetized, but I also don't want it to be formalized where I start reading books not because I want to read books, but because I need to create content, or I start letting the channel affect which books I read. Instead of picking up a book that I want to read, I'll pick up something that I think will get me more attention on YouTube. I really don't want that to kind of become my reality. The 8th question is, when did you start reading? So I actually don't remember when I started reading the page. I was really young. I remember when it first became a really important part of my life. So I was 4 when my parents moved to a new neighborhood. And our downstairs neighbor called Jane was a retired Jewish woman. And one day she took me out on an excursion. I mean, my little brother was about 6 months old at the time, so I think she knew that my mom was kind of slowly losing her mind with 2 kids under 5 in a renovating apartment. So she took me out and took me to the library, and I really fell in love with the library. I still remember the first picture book I read there. And then Jane encouraged my parents to take me there and sign me up for a library card, and the rest was kind of history. The first 12 years, 14 years, there we go, that's the math I was looking for. The first 14 years of my reading career were marked by Queens Public Library in North Hills, where she signed me up, and I eventually wound up working there when I was in high school, which was a bit of a dream come true and then a bit of a letdown once you realize what working in the library sometimes entails, not so fun parts. And yeah, I mean, that's what made me a reader, because I can't pinpoint a time in life where I stopped. It was just something that I kept doing. Now, hold on. Here we go. So Jane unfortunately passed away when I was about 12 or 13. And I wound up getting a lot of her book collection, the books that her family members didn't want. And it was really formative for me. Like this one, Till We Have Faces, is to this day one of my favorite books. And it was nice to I got these books at a very formative time in my life when I was, kind of branching out from YA and children's books to have her accompany me in my adult reading life, not just be the person that, got me into reading as a kid. I actually wrote an essay about this. It's for this magazine, O Reader. If you look for it, I think you'll find it. Sorry, that got really sentimental for an intro tag. I'm not normally this sentimental about books. Oh well. So the 9th question on this tag is, where do you read? I read mostly in bed. That's kind of the habit I've developed. So I try to read every night before bed. I'll put my phone on airplane mode and then read. I try to make it an hour. Usually it's just half an hour, but it's at least something. And I'm hoping to kind of read a bit more. I've just been really busy the past few years and I kind of don't have time to read throughout the day, but that half hour to hour of reading time in bed really means a lot to me. And then the last question is, what kinds of books do you like to read? This is such a cliche again, but I really do like to read everything. I like to stay curious. I like to read everything. I like to read literature, both classic literature and modern literature. I try to keep up with what's being published. I mean, I don't buy new releases because, again, I live in Serbia, but try and kind of keep up with what's being published and read it when I can. I love reading Balkan literature in particular because that's where I live and I know a little bit about it. But in general, I'm starting to kind of branch out into literature originally written in languages other than English. That doesn't mean I'm pretentious about my reading tastes. I love fantasy. Like, fantasy was my favorite genre growing up for a very, very long time, and I still try and go back to it. I try and read the classics as well as newer stuff coming out. I haven't been as good about reading fantasy over the past few years, but I'm hoping to kind of rectify that. I love romance novels. I haven't read as many recently. It's not something I keep coming back to at this point in my life, but I do still like reading them. I've been reading a lot more political theory and nonfiction recently. So the book I'm currently reading is Caliban and the Witch by Silvia Federici, which is a very foundational Marxist feminist text. So I like reading books that kind of delve deep into a leftist analysis of the world, because I'm trying to I like reading material that forces me to learn more, to engage mentally, and to really look at the world around me and look at why things are the way they are. So, you can expect pretty varied reading tastes on this channel. I don't read thrillers as much, but when I do, I'm always like, wow, I really like this. Why don't I read more of this? And then I don't. And the one genre I really don't do is self-help. I make an exception for the kind of psychology-based self-help, like I read Emotional Blackmail last year, which was really foundational, and like any online girly, I've read The Body Keeps the Score. And like any online girly in therapy, I read The Body Keeps the Score. But the more hustle mentality, girl boss, self-help, that's the one genre I really can't read. Like, I'm never going to read Atomic Habits. I'm never going to read that kind of stuff. And I try and be fair but critical in my approach to reading. Like, I'm not going to judge a romance novel by the same conventions that I would judge a Shakespeare play, not because I think they're bad, it's just completely different genre conventions. But at the same time, I'm not going to withhold criticism of a novel that I think could have done much better, even within its genre and intended audience. So yeah, I hope that's a good introduction to what this channel is going to be all about. My next video I'm hoping will be in honor of Women's History Month, although I don't know if I'll be able to upload it before March ends. And I hope this is a good taste for what I'll bring with this channel. Varied reading taste, fair but critical attitude, a bit of waffling as I get used to talking on camera, and as always, lots of books. Thanks for following me at Oz and elsewhere, and I hope you subscribe, and I hope you'll enjoy some of my future videos.